Yeah, I remember when I was younger, we always had a lot of Matthews and a lot of Davids in my class. And now I'm like, I feel like I don't ever see the name Matt.
Matthew
like anywhere.
is my middle name, and David is my father's name. So
is it really?
Yeah.
Look at that. I feel like there's a lot of Michaels around.
Now I feel like there's a lot of Michaels.
And I feel like the funny thing is, like, sometimes you meet people with your same name, and they're like, "Wow, the camaraderie I have with this person because we have the same name."
Because you have the same name,
but not for Michaels, because there's so many goddamn Michaels.
Yeah.
It's like I meet a Michael, and I'm like, "You mean nothing to me." Like the fact that we share a name, nothing. You get nothing from me. In a weird turn of events, I ended up doing a bar mitzvah very late in life. And I had to pick a Jewish name, and I didn't know I had to pick a Jewish name, and so I went with Aaron because it was already my middle name, and I was like, "Well, I'll never forget that."
Yeah. So now you're Michael Aaron James Aaron.
Michael Aaron James Aaron Schusterman. Majaja.
I like that. Majaz. Yeah.
Majaja.
That's funny. Oh my gosh. We call you that from now on. Welcome to this episode of Sips and Clips. My name is Lian McFalls.
I'm Michael Schusterman.
And today we've got a very special guest of mine. I guess I can consider him a friend. He's a friend of mine, you know?
It's no consideration. Nope. Definitely a friend.
Jesse Goldsmith is in the building, people. He and I worked on the Zemeckis film Here, which is actually going to be coming out this weekend. So go to the theaters and go see that and support a little
indie movie.
Well, and yeah, just with Robert Zemeckis, you know, little indie movie. But he's an editor, so we're going to talk to him about editing and what it's like from his perspective on what it's like to be an editor.
I hear there's a big spoiler for Back to the Future 5 in this movie. Not Back to the Future 4, just 5.
Yeah,
so I don't know if they just jumped
4.
over it. So I know you guys can't confirm that, but I'm just saying.
It's too obvious to go right to 4.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, when they went back to
Keep
the
on your
future
toes.
and then they came back from the future, they went so far that they skipped over 4.
It's actually just set in the present. He's just living his life. There's nothing exciting that happens in the movie. He just goes to the grocery store.
He's living his life.
That's it. It's just him living his life in the present.
Well, before we get into it, why don't we see what everyone is sipping on? Michael, why don't you go first?
I brought smoothies for the table today.
Woohoo!
So I'm sipping on a smoothie. Crazy.
What kind of smoothies you get?
It's a berry smoothie. I have no clue. I just saw berry in the title and I was like, alrighty.
Another basic drink.
Basic berry.
Hey.
It's not basic.
It's
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Hey, it's not an almond milk latte.
I will say the liquid base for this smoothie is almond milk. So I am doing my part.
You still keep the almond milk theme going.
I am doing my part in drying up the California water basin.
If you had offered me an almond milk latte when I got here, I would have taken it over a smoothie. But it's okay. It's okay.
Missed opportunity.
I had one this morning.
Of course you did. Jesse, what are you sipping on?
I took bring a drink to mean bring an alcoholic drink.
Totally fine.
Which is funny because that is the podcast art for our podcast is like a cocktail, which we've never had alcohol on this podcast.
So you're the
it is
first.
a cocktail.
Also, to be fair, though, we're usually recording this podcast at 11 a.m., so we're not usually drinking that early.
Had it been 11 a.m., I would have brought some sort of caffeinated drink, but
Hair of the dog.
Yeah, exactly. I've had a long day, and I'm also a notoriously anxious interviewer, and I don't love talking about myself. So I brought some rye whiskey, which also ties into a project Lian and I are currently working on.
I'm glad that you bought an alcoholic drink. We should have had alcoholic drinks today.
We're going to do this podcast one of these days at like Friday at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then
Like a happy hour.
Exactly.
Happy hour.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the podcast, we're just like,
We're
it's a
sloshed.
great time, everybody.
Broken all of our NDAs from every movie.
Oh,
Everything.
yeah. I got my 3 drinks again. For those of you who did not hear I don't even remember which episode it is that I talked about it, but I always find myself having 3 drinks for some reason in front of me, not planned. So today I've got water. I've got a Celsius Tropical Vibe, which I've never had this flavor before, but it's actually pretty good. And then Michael also got me a smoothie that has a lot of stuff in it that I can't remember, but it's some sort of banana chocolate peanut butter smoothie.
Yeah, I went to
that
one of
was
those
craving.
LA smoothie shops where like the ingredient list of these smoothies is like what you would expect on the back of like an ultra processed protein bar, right? Like you're like, I'm gonna have the strawberry smoothie with Zyandoglycerin. What? And they're like,
Xanthan gum?
and it's got goji berries, and you're like, okay, you know,
Probably omega 3s.
Yeah, omega 3s.
apologies. I got a goji berry stuck in my throat.
Definitely don't cut that out. Definitely keep
No,
this is
keep
good.
that
This
in
is
there.
good stuff.
me, you know, whatever it is. Told you it's the Xandathar gum or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
When you were in college, was Four Loko
Did
a thing?
It didn't. Yes, but they got when I was in college, the caffeine had already been removed from them.
Yeah.
because they were illegal. It's illegal to sell it with caffeine.
Yeah, when I was in college, it was caffeinated. It was a disaster.
Four Loko is also like the grossest drink I think
it's
I've
not.
ever. It's just like syrup. It's like green apple syrup.
I
and
think
vodka.
they were like phasing out
The
when
caffeine?
I came into college. It was like, oh, Four Loko. Like, have you had one? I haven't had one. Have you had one? Like, oh, they don't sell them anymore. Oh, they don't. The bit like
Yeah.
it was like, and then like if I saw one, I was like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah.
And I was like, these aren't allowed.
I think
What-
I was in the age range that was like, we are the reason that
These
they-
are banned.
Yeah, like I remember in college, like when they made the announcement that they were pulling the caffeine out or changing it, like kids ran out to all the stores and were
Buy
like
'em up
running
before
down
they
the
could be gone.
streets
Oh
of
my
Philadelphia with
God.
cases of Four Loko, like stocking
crazy.
up.
You mentioned people walking through the streets of Philly with Four Locos. Why don't you tell us about how you got interested in the industry?
Yeah,
What's your
in
story?
film?
My
What's your
story.
story, yeah.
my superhero origin. Yeah,
Or your super villain.
or supervillain,
supervillain.
more likely. Yeah, I mean, look, I think like a lot of other, many of us, as a kid, I just consumed a lot of movies all the time. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and because I would watch so many movies, my parents decided at a certain point, like instead of just letting Jesse spend all of his time sitting in front of the TV, maybe we should like see if we can send him to some sort of film class. So like pretty early, like as early as maybe like 6th grade or something like that, my parents sent me to like an intro to animation class at this extracurricular.
Like a summer camp?
It wasn't exactly a camp. There was a thing that unfortunately no longer exists in Pittsburgh called the Pittsburgh Filmmakers. And they were, I believe, I might get some of the details wrong here because I was pretty young, but I believe they were sort of an offshoot of the University of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And these graduate students would teach film classes to young kids.
So it's like a community outreach program.
Yeah, something
thing.
like that.
Paint the picture. What year is this? Are we in?
2000 and this has to be around 2002.
Okay. So
yeah,
you're like as a kid in elementary school being like, Mom, can we go to the Blockbuster?
Yeah.
And then are you looking in magazines about what the best movies are? Are you looking at the classics? Are you watching?
Part of it was that the Pittsburgh filmmakers also had some involvement with some local like art house theaters.
Oh, okay.
And my dad is very into film, and he started taking me to go see movies at some of those smaller theaters in Pittsburgh. And I think like one of the earlier movies I saw that just kind of like cracked open my brain was Princess Mononoke.
Oh, okay.
So I got initially, like, I think a lot of my interest in film grew out of an interest in animation.
Did you then go and watch
Was it- I was gonna-
a bunch of Miyazaki films
I
after
was going to
that?
ask like Japanese animation or American animation?
It started with anime, and then it sort of expanded to like some more obscure American stuff, like Ralph Bakshi and like American Pop and Wizards. I found a lot of weird stuff because there was a really wild video shop in Pittsburgh. It was run by like one person who just owned like every weird, obscure movie you could ever imagine. It was like walking into like, if you can imagine like a library from like Harry Potter where there's like books stacked from floor to ceiling. You'd walk in and it would be like that, but with videotapes, And I
Wow.
would always just kind of pick
That's cool.
stuff based on weird covers and weird artwork and stuff. And I think
So you weren't making your way through the AFI Top 100. You were just going through and being like, that looks fun.
Yeah, I think so. Like another early one I found there, I think, was the Jean-Pierre Jeunet movie, City of Lost Children. So like I was just discovering like all these weird things. So eventually my parents sent me to take animation classes at the Pittsburgh Filmmakers. And then in those classes, we used some program. It was all stop motion, very simple stop motion. But then we would do a little bit of editing in those very early versions of Final Cut. And I sort of immediately, like as early as middle school, started enjoying the editing part of everything the most.
So you get into film and then you go to high school. What was there? I know this, but the listeners don't know that Jesse and I went to the same college, different times.
Is that how you guys met?
No, we met just coincidental. Well, there was a coincidence that we went to the same college, but we met on the last film we worked on together. Yeah. Which I don't even remember how.
Ben Murphy.
Ben Murphy
Ben Stringfellow to Ben Murphy to Jesse.
The story of how everybody in film meets. It's like, oh, I know this person who knew this person who recommended that person. And now have been working together for what, almost 2 years now?
I think like a year and a half. Because I think I started last March on here. So it's been like, about a year and a half. So I want to ask though, what made you choose Temple University? Were you looking at other colleges for film, or were you not? Maybe you weren't looking for film. Maybe you were looking at something else.
If I'm being honest, I had a great experience at Temple, but I think my decision to go to Temple was more practicality and convenience. It was close enough to home that I could get home easily, and I knew pretty early on that I was gonna look for film schools. I don't know exactly when, but like well before I started applying to colleges, I think I knew I was interested in film school. Temple was a good school, and it was in state, and it was convenient, and I also really loved Philadelphia, so I ended up there, and it ended up being a really great decision. I'm glad I made it, even though at the time I think the reasons for going weren't. I think I was just like, sure, I'll go to any film school.
And at what point did you know you wanted to do specifically editing? Like, at what point do you go from like general filmmaking, interested in working on sets or working whatever, and then you eventually move out here and pursue this career? What's the turning point?
That was all. Like, to be honest, I don't think there was a turning point. I think that's kind of always what it was. Like I was saying, that even in those animation classes, I really liked playing around in Final Cut. And, when I went to Temple, I took all kinds of classes, but the ones that were obviously the ones that I was enjoying the most and doing the best in and the most invested in were, I think at the time, Temple only offered like 2 editing focused classes, but I took both of them and I loved them. And I was just invested in those in a way that I wasn't in some of the other classes I took, like screenwriting and things like that.
So then after Temple, how did you make the move out here? Did it take a little bit, or did you just kind of come out right away?
Well, both. Okay. I came out right away. I did an internship program through Temple. I did Temple's Los Angeles internship program.
I was going to ask about that too.
So the LA internship would have been 2010.
What year in school did you do it? Did you do that junior year or senior year?
Well, I did it my senior and a half year. I learned a lot about networking and how things actually work. Like in some ways, I probably learned 80% of the most valuable information I needed to learn about the practicalities of working in the film industry. I learned in that internship program.
This internship that you did as well, Lian.
I did that too.
Are you working at a production company, or is this like a Temple program? Like, you say internship and it makes me think like you're working at a studio. Is that the case?
So Temple basically brings you out to LA, and
by brings you out, that's not to say that
they don't pay for it.
That's what I was trying to get to. It's not like that they're going and paying for you to stay somewhere, but they're like, here's where you'll stay.
It's like a dorm. There's like a Temple dorm somewhere.
And then you also have to figure out how to get out here. And so you have to fly, or you drive, or you have to figure that out.
And most people are doing this their final semester of
I think so. I think a lot of people are juniors and seniors.
I did it my second semester junior year.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you went back to
then I went back to Temple, and I remember, I think my thought process was that if I didn't like it out here, I had another year to figure out what I wanted to do.
Sure, that makes sense.
But there are a lot of people who would do the program probably the way that did you do it in the summer?
I did it in the summer.
And then stay here after.
Then stay here. Some people do that too.
Yeah, so I did the internship. So basically, Temple, you come out here with Temple, you find an internship or two. Some people did two.
Oh, you find it yourself.
They have connections, so they do a lot. They have a lot of good resources to connect you to places that are hiring interns. And then what happens is you get an internship that through one of Temple's connections or something you find yourself that Temple gives a thumbs up to, and you get credits for doing that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you take like classes out here too. I don't know if it was the same when you did it, but we had like an industry or entertainment perspectives class. So then we had to talk about our internships, and then we had to also like write papers on the internship. So like that's
cool.
the class that really, and they always came and like brought speakers from the industry. So then that's the class that really taught you how to like stay in touch with people and how to network
That's
and
cool.
like continue after you graduate and are trying to get into the industry.
And I remember they got us like some access to some interesting events and things that we could go to, and they set up like networking happy hours for us to go and meet people.
I get asked to go to those, like as an alumni.
I got
like,
off their grid somehow. I was getting asked for a while, and then they lost track of me. So going back to how I said I came out here immediately, and it took a while. So I did come out here immediately. I did the internship. I thought I was going to stay. I got offered a job at the post house I interned at, and as I was doing my sort of formal training to be hired there, I decided that LA was not for me. So I went back.
Interesting. Okay.
I went back to Philadelphia.
Elucidate on that. Why didn't you like LA?
I mean, LA is a hard city to adapt to. Like, I think there is a lot of truth in what people say, which is that it kind of takes like 2 years to find your home
place.
here.
Yeah.
And I was, for the internship, I was only here for 3 months. I was missing all my friends and family back east. I was living in a neighborhood that I didn't find interesting. It was also that I was worried about committing to working at a post house. Like post houses
this is
are
not
awesome.
This is
but it's not what I wanted.
Commercial
to do.
house. This is an advertising house.
It was. They did all sorts of stuff. They did like airline edits, and they did like some work for like, one of my tasks while I was there was like generating chapter stills for movies being sold on iTunes. And the job.
Oh my God!
interesting.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Wow, that pulled me back.
That level of like post minutia, like which it all needs to get done, but it just wasn't the thing that I just wasn't excited about it. So I was like, I'm gonna go back to Philadelphia and at least like be around my friends and family.
People you like, yeah.
Yeah. So I went back to Philly and I worked, in retail for like a year and eventually got an unpaid internship on a production shooting in Philly, which got me some connections in New York. I moved to New York. I did like a bunch of set PA work and stuff, but I was working very inconsistently while I was in New York and just like losing money. Eventually the crew that I worked with in Philly, another movie came to Philly. They hired me on that movie. I had let them know I was interested in being a post PA. They hired me back on this next movie because they knew
You wanted to be
a post PA position opened up. Prior to the post PA, I was just doing like day player stuff in New York. I'd get a call at like 8 p.m. on a Monday and somebody would be like, hey, we need PAs on set for Blue Bloods tomorrow. Can you be there at 5 a.m? I was living like day to day, not knowing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you're chatting with the producers. They're like, what do you want to do, Jesse? And you're like, well, I really want to be a post PA. That's what I really want to do.
Yeah. And the prior internship I had in Philadelphia.
Kept in touch with them.
Yeah. They were the people who really knew me and knew what I wanted to do.
So then they were able to bring you back on as a post PA.
They brought me back to Philly.
As a post PA.
PA. And that was on a movie called Dead Man Down. So that was the first time
Why were they doing post in Philly?
They were just there for production. But they brought editorial to town.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I understand. So you were the local hire for the editing office for the film out here in Philly.
I was the local hire, and then as I was working on it, me and the assistant editor really got along. And they had a post PA that they were going to use back in LA, And at a certain point, he got another job or something and dropped out. So the assistant editor was like, hey, dude, if you want to move to LA, like we'll keep you on the movie, but like you got to move in a month. And things had been hard
That's opportunity knocking.
Yeah, things had been hard on the East Coast for like, I think it was about 2 years. So it had been 2 years of me kind of like struggling, working retail, bouncing between Philly and New York, taking day player jobs, and like nothing was sticking. And I really liked this assistant editor, and I was in a cutting room.
So you're 22, 23?
Yeah. This would have been 2012 when I worked on this movie. So I was like 24. So I took him up on it, and I moved to Los Angeles on the 4th of July, 2012,
Nice.
and bought a car the day I landed. My dad helped me out. He flew out before me and like arranged for there to be like, he made the deal for this used car.
That's great.
Nice.
And
What was it? What was the car?
I still have it. I drove it here today.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
It's
like
reliable. What is I gotta know.
Lightning blue 2007 Toyota Matrix.
Incredible.
Am-
M Theory,
Amazing.
so it's got a little extra pickup. So I moved on the 4th of July, met my dad, picked up the car, and drove to work because they worked us on the 4th of July. And yeah, that was like, I think I was on that movie probably for a total of about 9-10 months or something from between Philly and LA.
And then you, that's how you got out here. And then I'm assuming then you stayed out here after that.
Then I
was done.
stayed
Yeah.
out here.
And how did you go from that PA to assistant editor?
Yeah, I did sort of the classic. In a lot of ways, I sort of took the same steps as that assistant editor I worked with, because we became friends and got along, and I got a lot of good advice from him. And the way he had gotten his hours and learned Avid was he worked in reality TV. So I took a few more PA jobs. I think I post PA'd for maybe like 2 more years. And then I can't even remember exactly how I found the job, but I ended up getting hired at like a reality TV company on a handful of different shows. And I worked there nights as a night assistant editor for another 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, just bouncing between stuff that they had going on. And that was like a real crash course. Like that is a way to learn fast, because there's nobody there to help you except the other assistant editors are there to help you, but you've got no like technical support. You're working overnight. You're sort of like, it's just you and whoever might be working on the other shows there at night, which sometimes there'd be like 5 of us, and sometimes it'd just be like 1 or 2 of us there overnight, just depending.
That night AE stuff for reality, I hear, just totally messes with your like sleep schedule. Like it just, anybody who's working those like night jobs, I can't even imagine where you're sleeping during the day and working at night. And
yeah, I don't remember having like any particular struggles with sleep or like feeling exhausted or topsy-turvy, but it was definitely like a weird way to
live your day
to day.
Yeah.
So you're an assistant editor, and then did you stay in touch with that assistant to then move back into net? Like once you got your hours, how did you get back to?
We stayed in touch, but I had also stayed in touch with a post-production supervisor from that same film.
Okay.
And after about a year, maybe a little over a year, 1.5 years of working nights in reality TV, the post supervisor was like, hey, I'm working on this little independent film and it's non-union. We need an assistant editor. So I took that job. So that was my first assistant editor job on a feature. But then what ended up happening is on that job, I met an editor who had some like serious connections at Bad Robot. And she and I got along, and she was like, hey, my husband is working on Star Wars and they need a PA. Not an assistant editor, they need a PA. But the movie's almost done, and like it's probably a good opportunity to meet some folks.
I imagine this is Force Awakens.
Yeah. And they needed someone fast because it was the end, and it was, the crazy rush to finish the movie. So it was one of those things where it was like, I had a phone call with them and I needed to start like the next day. So I did that, and I met a bunch of people at Bad Robot. We got along, and then I got moved on to like Star Trek as a visual effects assistant editor, and then I was kind of like off to the races. So like, this is all right. I'm kind of like in the zone of what I've been trying to do for a while.
So that's 2017, 2018 when it would really started off.
2016. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that move over to like a couple Bad Robot shows, I think, was the real like turning point.
The kicker.
Yeah. Oh, then I had a little stint in feature animation.
Oh yeah, you were on the
really?
Lego Batman.
Did a couple Lego movies, and on one of them I got a first assistant editor credit through just another connection. It's funny. It's like all these jobs at a certain point, it's like the way I got from one to the other one feels like the same story. It's like
It's
I met
always-
someone.
I met someone,
So
yeah.
like this is
No, but I think that's not silly. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like, it's kind of funky whenever, I don't know if you have this experience when you explain your jobs to people who don't work in film and they're like, so you just don't know where your next job is going to come from? Like,
yeah.
there's no like job board. And it's like, no, I just meet a dude.
Yeah.
Like odds are I'm on a job. Somebody gets hired for a week. We kick it off. We go have a beer and then we're friends. And then
Yeah.
later, a year and a half later, that guy calls me and it says, hey, I got a job. They need somebody.
Yeah.
I thought of you. And it's like, that's how
And it's just like you
gain employment.
you just like meet enough people that you have like a genuine connection with that at a certain point, probably somebody is going to hear about something and you won't be out of work for too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People always ask me, does the union help you with jobs?
I get asked that all the time.
And the other thing that I love to tell people is I'm like, oh yeah, when I interview with people, it's just like getting coffee. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, like we just got like lunch or coffee
What?
and like that's my interview. And they're like, wow,
Well,
really?
The super fun one is people are like, yeah, I'm on my 5th round interview for this finance job. And it's like, my interview is a 30-minute Zoom call where it's like, hey, are you a psychopath? And you're
Yeah.
like, no. And they're like, great, we start on Monday.
Yeah.
And you're going to be working with me for the next year of your life.
Yeah.
Like that's, you get a phone call and then you're off to a job for the
Can
next
you
year.
start in an hour?
An hour and a half. Yeah.
But I think that even hearing from you or anybody, for people who either are trying to start out or people who just don't know that this is how we get jobs.
Yeah.
And just like, I think it's still helpful for people to know, like, yeah, you are successful, you got a job through just making connections and like talking to people and like keeping up with people, so that other people know, like, yeah, this is what I have to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think like 90% of me, especially as an assistant editor, 90% of me like getting consistent work was just getting along with people.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the skills I just sort of learned on the job,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
or especially early on.
I mean, yeah, we don't have the same thing in other industries where it's like we have certifications and we're learning. You're like, I know how to do this like certain type of like protocol. I know how to answer these kind of things. It's like, no, most assistant editors know how to do the job. The question is just, is there cohesion in the team? Mm-hmm. Can you solve problems together? Can you work through issues together?
Can you deal with each other for 16-hour days?
I
For a
know I
year.
can't.
Yeah.
I can't deal with Jesse for 16 hours.
This is why we work.
Yeah, the
remote,
listeners
right?
can't tell, but we've had to erect a wall in between them because they're constantly
Yeah,
trying to
this
get
is
at
why
each
Jesse
other.
and I always work remote. That way that if we do want to talk to each other, then we can call each other. But
Yeah.
if we don't, then we just can
Yeah.
either not
fights.
answer or, you got to keep us apart.
We can be in different states. That's preferable.
Yeah. So you make, after, you've kind of been an assistant for a while, how did you go from assistant
Yeah.
to editor?
So the way I ended up making the jump from assistant to editor was actually on Pinocchio. Initially, I was hired to cut previs,
Oh,
which was awesome. That was like, because it was a team of people I'd worked with before. They
And
knew,
just to be clear, this is the Robert Zemeckis Pinocchio.
yes.
Not the
Del
Guillermo
Toro.
del Toro.
mad respect to both. So the folks I was working with knew that I wanted to cut, and I think
And did you get, just sorry to sidetrack, did
Yeah.
you get hired as an animatic editor because of the work you'd been doing in animation, because that was similar?
I got hired as the previs editor simply because the team just wanted somebody that they'd worked with before.
Okay.
And they didn't want to bring another like a big
That maybe didn't
expensive
understand.
editor on
Sure.
that early.
What film had you done with this team before?
This was still the Zemeckis team, so I had done Marwen, Welcome to Marwen and the Witches.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So previs was like a good opportunity for them to see whether I knew how to throw a scene together. So I cut storyboards and previs for a while, man, maybe like 4 or 5 months. But the thing is that like with a movie like that, really the previs sort of like actually becomes the movie. It's not like you're prevising like a live action sequence that's sometimes you were, but in the case of that film, not so much.
Yeah. And
so just by it being sort of like a natural continuation of cutting the previs, I ended up on for the rest of the movie because the previs cuts really just became the cuts and that
Now as an editor, I mean now you're managing people. So what was it like for you to go from the person who's getting the tasks to them, the
person giving them.
delegate to,
Yeah.
to the person giving out the tasks? Was that like, was it kind of weird, or were you like, I actually feel...
No, it's still weird.
It's weird.
I hate telling people what to do. It's not something that comes naturally to me. Like, my instinct is to be like, how can I be helpful to you?
Yeah.
But one thing that helped me get a little more comfortable with that was actually my first job as an editor. I had an assistant editor who is amazing. Still friends. I actually just saw her last week. And I think early on in the process, and maybe even throughout the whole thing, because it was my first cutting job, I would like do stuff or like over explain stuff just because I was so used to being like the person who did it. And at a certain point, she was like, I got this, dude. Like, you can trust me. You don't have to
look over my shoulder.
You don't have to look over my shoulder or do this stuff yourself. Like, I am here to do this and I can do it. And I was like, oh. And then I realized, like, yes, I am holding on to a lot of this too tightly just because I'm not comfortable giving people work to do. I'm not totally comfortable dictating. I have gotten much more comfortable with it just because I've had to. But like I said, it's just not something that comes naturally to me.
Lian and I have talked about it. It's such this, it's one of those things when I've started working in assistant, in editorial, and especially after leaving the like post PA apprentice realm, getting into the task of like, I have to like, for one, figure out, like, not be bossed around, but figure out how I fit into this puzzle.
Yeah.
Right. Where can I be helpful? As opposed to like when you're a PA, he'll just kind of tell you what to do. You don't really have to like, there's a little bit of
and you're a little bit
stuff. But
there's also a little bit when you're a PA, you're kind of like, well, I know I'm at the bottom of the food chain.
Yeah,
so
I'm just here to do whatever anybody tells me to do.
Yeah.
But when you're like an assistant, or when you're a second or a first, and you have to start telling people what to do, that's has been such this at least kind of mind meld fuck for me of like, man, that's like a whole different feeling. That's like a whole different job. It's a whole different kind of thing than what I've been doing for 10 years now, just sitting at my computer and doing editing tasks that people tell me to do,
Yeah.
And
it's funny because like in thinking about like what I want to do for my career, I never wanted to be a boss or like be in charge. Like, I just wanted to cut a movie, and unfortunately for me, part of cutting a movie is
being a boss,
being a boss and in charge.
So I think I still struggle with it a little bit. And especially like when I was an assistant editor, I would always hate when someone would come in like late in the day and just drop a bomb and be like, hey, this thing needs to be done. And then that person would leave.
Yeah.
Like, they're done for the day. And you're like, well, what about me? So I never wanted to be that person. And I think I still try not to. I think, only in the most necessary of circumstances will I drop bombs late in the day. So I think I'm often running away from some of the things that I experienced.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense.
That actually goes into this other question that I have here. Your experience as an assistant working with different editors, like, it sounds like that's something that you learned, like, okay, I didn't want to do that.
Or
you saw them do that you wanted to do in terms of, even if it's in terms of like workflow, like, they did it this way and I found it easier. Or did you kind of gather any kind of like storytelling from other editors too? Or did you just kind of like do things on your own? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think like,
and the big question, how do you like your bins? Do you like them listed? The middle, the tile
This is actually
this is actually there's 3 camps.
There's
which camp is every editor in, and it changes everything. Tile view.
He's tile view.
Tile view.
Do you know Michael?
Do people cut with list view?
Michael is list view.
Every editor I've ever worked with has only ever used list view.
That's outrageous.
I said the same thing.
Every editor I've worked with.
How do you know what you're looking for?
I worked for one editor who used grid view, and that was in the last gig that I did. And that was like, I was like, I didn't know people use this. Like at the time I was like, that's crazy. And then I found out I was the weird one. Like it was shocking to learn that I was the odd one, that everybody else had been using grid view and organizing it with like the A cam, the B cam, and the multicam forever. I just was like, oh, we all use list view. We all just look at lines of text all day.
I'm very visual. I'm very visual. Like I need to, I can't like memorize. I'll never remember what a setup is. Yeah. Like I need to see it.
But although I do want to know, how do you like your dailies sorted?
Oh, we've talked about this too.
We talked about this in a previous episode.
The easiest thing for me, and this one I get why people do different things, but the easiest thing for me is for it to be alphanumerical by scene and setup. Like, so,
So not script order?
No,
you like it set up in order?
It's easier for me because if I'm looking at the script notes are always in
setup order.
So that's just how my brain works. It's easier for what I have in the Avid to match the notes.
And is that something you decided for yourself that you liked, or were you working with an editor that you were like, that's the way they do it, and I like that system, and I'm going to co-opt that?
I think I decided for myself. Like I think I never even thought about doing something different than alphabetical order.
Yeah.
And then somebody mentioned doing it in script order, and I was like, oh, that does actually make sense, but just for the way my brain works, I need it organized.
You worked with somebody who did line string outs?
Yeah, that's I was going to get to how you go through all the footage if you watch it all, because I know we were talking before.
And that was really
about
interesting to me
editors.
to learn that and I've now encountered. I started asking people about that, and I've encountered a lot more editors who have done this, and I didn't know people did it this way. It's just really interesting to me where this kind of stuff comes from. And Lian and I have talked about it, that like when I cut my shorts or anything like that I do, it's interesting to me how many, like I can think about how I'm editing it and how it's different because I've been shadowing these editors and watching them and thinking like, oh, I like how they do it, or you know what, that doesn't work for me, I'm going to do it this other way. But you're kind of picking up these little cranberries along the way and adding them to your fruit basket, right? And it's interesting to me what things stick in people and what things don't.
Yeah, line string outs I don't do, but what I love that maybe is even more labor intensive is I just love having my dailies scripted. I don't have that.
You script sync?
I mean, I don't. I'll have
No, but I meant you like having a script sync.
I love script sync.
Interesting.
That is like just being able to crack open the script and click on the line and watch every take of that line back to back to back is amazing. And unfortunately, the project I'm on now, I think, one, we don't have the resources to do it, and two, there is just an outrageous amount of ad-libbing and improv. So I think it for most of the scenes in the movie, it would be an impossible
That was my job for about 2 weeks.
Yeah,
was one scene on a movie where we just had ad-lib, and all I did was write in the ad-lib into the screen and script sync about, it was like 90 hours of footage.
Yeah. I feel like we jumped a question though.
My question
what
was,
did I pick up from other editors?
Yeah, from other editors, and like kind of the differences between working with, because Michael and I have talked about how every editor is different, and so they all like to do different things. So what was that like, either working with different editors or having to learn a new way of doing something?
Well, I did work for a long time. I worked with the same editor, so I got you get into a rhythm. And on projects prior to those, to be honest, I was like a visual effects editor, or for one reason or another, like didn't have as much close interaction with the editor. So I feel like from the editor I worked with the longest, I mean, I just picked up on like, I liked that he genuinely cared about like my thoughts on the movie. I think that's a big thing. Getting feedback from the people you work with is important, especially because sometimes the director doesn't want anybody to see anything, and like the assistant editor or editors by default like have to watch it. Yeah. So like you don't have to like go behind the director's back to like have someone see the movie to give you some early feedback. So just like, yeah, I think I like including the assistant editor in the creative process as much as possible. Not for everybody, but for a lot of assistant editors, that's like, I think what they want. Right, yeah. Lian? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I love being able to give input in the process. So I have an editor that I work with want input from me. I also feel like that doesn't always happen, where there's a lot of editors who like might not want your input, and that's fine. But it's either they're protective of the cut, or there could be a slew of reasons of why they might not want your input. So I feel like that to be an assistant and being able to give input is always also helpful for the assistant to also start thinking like an editor, because not only can you give the feedback, but like you can then bounce the ideas off the editor, which is essentially what you do as an editor. You're just doing it with the director.
One incredibly valuable thing that the editor I worked with for a long time did is that I would be, as the first assistant editor, my number one priority every single day was that if the director was in the room with the editor, I was in there taking notes. So actually, as a first assistant editor for many years, I was off of Avid for like hours and hours a day.
I think that's a pretty common. I don't think that's super uncommon for a lot of firsts.
I feel like it's gotten less common than it used to be. I don't know. Because again, like I worked with the same people for so long. I don't have a whole lot to compare it to. But that, I think without that, I would never have been able to cut. Like if I had gotten the opportunity, I would have sat down at the Avid and been like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what to do with this stuff. I don't know how to make something out of this. But I literally spent 4 years watching the creative process, which was amazing.
Speaking of that, just, being with your team, I think it kind of ties into a broader question about like setting up an editing culture, especially as an editor or as a first assistant, right? Like I think like those two people are generally the people most, obviously with the director as well, impactful on just creating the kind of culture that you want. Do you think about something like that when you're going into a movie, when you're working on it? Are you thinking about like, what kind of energy do I want to bring to the cutting room? And basically, what do you prioritize? What do you emphasize?
I really don't like the culture that feels like you have to be glued to the Avid and you have to every day work late and just like give your entire life to the thing. Because if you don't have a life outside of the cutting room, like you're not going to be able to bring anything back to the cutting room. And I try not to have people work any longer than is necessary or good for the movie. Obviously, we always hit these points where we're coming up against a screening or a deadline and we gotta like crunch and it's madness and you're working long hours. But like I like for most normal days to be normal days, for people to feel like they have room to breathe, because I think that everybody does a better job when they can relax a little bit, and they'll have more energy when we get to the parts when we can't. You don't want to burn people out before there's even something to burn out for. And I've worked in cutting rooms where people are in burnout mode like right away, and it's never good for the movie, and it's never good for like the relationships on the movie. So as much as we can maintain some sort of normalcy and work-life balance and camaraderie at the same time and still get the work done as good as we can, like that's sort of what you always strive for. But like don't force yourself to work when we're in an okay place and we don't have to.
Yeah, I actually I have a follow-up question to that of burnout. Have you experienced it? And then how have you gotten out of it?
Oh, I've experienced it.
How have you gotten out of burnout? Or do you just kind of sit in it for the rest of the film? You just sit in burnout mode?
I think the way I get out of it is sort of by like what I was just saying, which is that when there are times when you can have a more relaxed work day, like take it, because like the insanity is right around the corner. And if you never get out of the burnout, like at some point you're just going to crash and you're not going to get anything done. So yeah, I mean, I had on one movie, a really, really difficult director's cut. Luckily that director's cut screening went really well. And there was like a giant sigh of relief afterwards. And like the next 2 weeks, I worked a normal day and forced myself to work late. And I gave myself the room to kind of like be okay, prioritizing myself for a minute before things ramped up again.
Back into it.
Right.
Yeah.
There's, something to be said from being on the assistant side of things and dealing with your own screw ups, right? You screw up something, it happens.
Oh yeah.
As an editor, right now you're in this different position where like you can screw up as an editor, but maybe not in any way that like is not fixable immediately, or it's hard, like you're not doing turnovers or anything like that as an editor, typically something like that. So, I mean, you can screw up, but I think the severity of screw up is not necessarily going to cost a production like a ton of money, like an assistant editor screw up might. If that's
Unless my screw up trickles downhill to the assistant. Like if I
That's possible.
cut a wrong scene into a reel and
yeah,
like
100%.
like then that gets turned over to sound and they spend half a day
Even then,
conforming, you know.
even then, I say that's on the assistant editor. Like that's an assistant editor screw up to not have caught that and go over and be like,
but it can get vague.
I'm going to disagree with you on
Yeah.
this
Really?
one, Michael.
If it's like
because this happened.
Yeah, I mean, like
No.
I think the assistant editor trusts that the editor has creatively done
knows
the
where
right
it is.
thing.
Fair.
And especially if it's something subtle, like, oh, I recut this scene and accidentally cut a slightly older version of it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Well,
Thankfully,
because
this has never happened, I don't think. Has it?
No.
Has it, Lian?
No,
Has
it
this
hasn't.
happened?
It hasn't happened, Jesse. Oh, it happened Friday, but you caught that. But it wasn't a turnover.
Yeah.
I thought you just told that story because it happened on Friday.
That's probably why I did, but that wasn't at the front of my mind.
No, as an assistant, if I get something from the editor that says this is good to go, I just send it off.
Yeah. I will say, and this maybe is not normal for some editors, but if we're ever screening for executives or producers or like we are showing people, I always QC the movie with the assistant.
Really?
Always.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I always do.
I've never had that happen
And
before.
it's because of little things that are like small, creative, subjective things.
Yes, that's
like,
not a technical issue. It's
Yeah.
like a
like
yeah.
one time a director wanted me to like mix a line way hotter than it had been, and we were QCing and the line was still quiet, and I was like, oh shit, I never cut in the louder version of the line. But like an assistant editor would have caught that unless they had been in the room when I got that note. So yeah, that's why I always watch. I don't watch like turnovers, but like screenings always, yeah.
How do you handle, like, let's say that something gets in there and it's a screw up, but it might be like the assistant screw up. How do you handle like protecting your team from something that maybe they messed up?
Yeah, I mean, I immediately throw them under the bus. And take responsibility, yeah.
It's kind of. I mean, this
You're like, that is not my fault. I didn't do that.
Oh boy, Lian, I don't know, Lian did something.
Lian must have changed this line.
But it kind of goes back to that unfortunate relationship of like you having to be a boss.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's times where you have to tell the people who work for you that they screw it up and you need to tell them that they can't screw up again on this thing or whatever. But in the same vein, it's like you also want those people to feel comfortable from being attacked, quote unquote, for lack of a better word, by the people above you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what I do in those circumstances, which thankfully have not, like, I don't think we've ever had anything really big go wrong.
At least not with me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sure,
about
but then
your
even then, it's like
previous-
you as an
But, like-
assistant and your screw ups or the people
Yeah.
you're working with, their screw ups, stuff like that. Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, if something happens and a director is like, oh, I noticed this mistake, we got, like, that can't happen again, blah, blah, blah. I will never direct the blame at anybody in particular. I try to use the word we as much as possible. Like, we, the cutting room, failed, or we, the cutting room, are responsible for that. Not like this specific person is responsible for that thing. And then, I think I try to work with people who are understanding and aren't going to take criticism personally, and people who just will understand that if I say, hey, this thing happened, just so you know, they'll know that shouldn't happen again, and it probably won't,
Yeah.
It just make people aware and don't be a dick about it, because it's going to happen, and it's going to happen frequently, know? But it's just like keep everybody in the loop as to what's going wrong and what's going right.
What are your thoughts on working from home or in the office? Do you have pros and cons to it? Do you prefer one, the other?
I always fall in the middle on these things. I like a hybrid. Because I like seeing the people I'm working with in person. Also because like I try to work with people I like, So I do think there is value in spending some time in person.
Do you find it difficult? Because I know usually the editor and the director are working in the same room. So do you find it difficult when you're working remotely and you need to speak to the director over Zoom or whatever it is that you're using?
Depends how technical your director is. I've worked with directors who have some trouble with these
With
things.
Evercast and getting it all set
Evercast
up.
and Zoom and Clearview. So yeah, I think it can be director specific. If we're specifically talking about directors, it can depend on the director. I've, one director I've worked with, I only want to work in person. I don't enjoy working remotely. And then another one I can think of, working remotely is actually very easy because he doesn't want to sit there and watch you make all the changes and go over everything and check all the takes. Like he'll just watch a cut and say, this is what I don't feel is working, or this is what I feel is working, and here's what I want. So like, go do that. So that's easy to do remotely. But a director who really wants to dig into the cutting process with you, that is much better in person.
I will say I go back and forth on it from an assistant editor perspective of cutting in person or remotely, because like I've done films remotely and you just don't feel connected to anybody on the team. You just feel like it's this weird thing. You wake up and you sit in your computer and you're like, I might get a Slack and they tell me to do something, but I kind of done everything. Because normally like in a real office, if you finish something, you can go over to the editor of the first and you can be like, hey, I'm done. What else can I tackle? And they're like, oh, I've been, can you actually take a look at that scene or do this visual effects? You can just kind of help out wherever you can.
Yeah.
When you're doing it remotely, it's like, ping, and the editor may not even look at it. They may be like, I'm busy. I don't want to look at the ping that I got, right? And then you're just going to see them and be like,
That's why I hate working from home.
Yeah.
but some of the remote tools are amazing. Having Jump and being able to like set an export that's going to take 2 hours and then go home and then jump into my computer to do the compression and send it off and all that, and not have to wait at the office and watch a movie or something and be like, I'm wasting 2 hours of my goddamn time. Like it's so amazing.
Well, I think the remote thing but where in somewhere like post where there is quite a struggle for a work-life balance, oftentimes I think the remote thing has been good. I think in a lot of other industries it's done the opposite because people aren't used to being available at like 8 p.m. But we kind of are. So I think like for me personally, and I think for a lot of people I work with, like being able to work remotely has helped the work-life balance thing, because one way or the other, someone's going to call me at 8:30 or 9 p.m. at some point. And would I rather wait around in an office for that to happen, or would I rather like get the call at home? So for that, working remote is great. And I like having full days at home as well. Like if the director's not in, or if it's just kind of a slow, normal day, being at home and being able to spend time with my partner or just like do my laundry or like
Go to the gym, any number of things.
jump into the garden for 20 minutes on my lunch break. Like, I think that's great. So that sort of flexibility is awesome, especially in LA, where having to drive to an office from where I live can be a minimum of an hour.
Yeah, you've got a long,
if not an hour and a
commute.
half. Yeah. The hybrid system, I think,
like a hybrid system.
for me is the best.
Last question we have, which is actually one that I've been wondering. You have an agent, right?
I have an agent.
And I've been wondering, what does that process look like? Did you get an agent did like people tell you about them? Did you like interview other agents? I know a friend who...
I don't think this is a question most assistant editors even know much about. I don't know much about this either, of like the process. Like, when do you become an editor first, and then eventually 6 months into that, you're like, I should probably get an agent? Or is it like you have to get an agent before you get an editing job? Like, what is that like?
Yeah, I think most often, and again, I don't know if I can speak with a whole lot of expertise on this, because
We need to speak from your perspective.
yeah, from my perspective,
We're going to be asking other people this too. It's okay. Tell us your experience.
So if I'm wrong, you can just bury this episode.
It'd be like, Jesse was wrong.
But-
Someone else said this, and yeah.
I think it is very difficult to get an agent if you are not already cutting. I think
Okay.
I think being able to go to an agency and say, I have experience, and especially if you're like, and I have a job coming up, like them knowing that you're about to bring business their way will be huge. And knowing that like you've already done the thing that they're going to be trying to sell, you as, is also a huge boost. I never looked for an agent before I started cutting. I started cutting, and then I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I guess I should start looking for an agent. And luckily, like, again, I got my agent's name through somebody I knew who knew somebody. And
That's what I was going to ask too. How did you find your
I know
agent?
some editors who, they work with an editor for a long time as their assistant. And then when they inevitably become an editor, they get a co-editor credit or whatever that process is like. They'll take their agent's editor. They'll take their editor's agent. They'll be like, the editor will be like, all right, now that you're an editor, you need to meet my agent, Adam.
Yeah.
Sign them. And then that's their agent for the next 30 years or whatever.
Yeah. And I knew one or two other people who were repped by my agent. So I talked to them. They were happy. I had a good conversation with him. I spoke with maybe one other agent that was fine. They were very nice and probably would have been very helpful as well. But I connected with him and people I knew connected with him. So there wasn't a lot of shopping around.
And then what exactly, can you just explain the process of what the agent does for what would the benefit be of having an agent? And then what does that entail? Do they get a certain amount of what you bring in, or do you all, that kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, your agent, depending on the agent and the agency, will take a set percentage of your weekly rate or of whatever you earn in a week. I think generally it's about 10%. But they also, for me, this is very helpful. I hate negotiating a rate. I hate that part of the process. I'm never comfortable with it. I probably always cave too early and get less money than I'm worth. The agent
doesn't care.
Paid for himself. It's literally their job to negotiate. And
it's also the more that you get, the more that they get.
Exactly.
As well,
so they're negotiating for you and themselves. The other thing that is beneficial is people send them projects all the time. Agencies have all sorts of stuff coming in and out of their inboxes looking for crew. So they just have information about projects that are hiring that I might never have access to. When I'm looking for my own work, can only really find it through people I know. They just have all sorts of people coming to them saying, hey, this movie needs an editor. This movie needs a director of photography. This movie needs X, Y, and Z.
And sometimes agencies are bundling people too. They're bundling a DP, an editor, a production designer, or whatever.
Yeah,
if it's below the line, they've got all number of people.
That happened on my latest movie. I think my agent repped the DP on this thing as well.
That makes sense. So you get your first job and then you've got a job coming your way and you say that's when you would go to an agency and be like, I'm already doing this. Don't you want to rep me? That makes it easier.
Yeah, I think you kind of sell yourselves to them so that they can sell you to
the next show,
the next
project. That makes sense.
I think right now I probably wouldn't be working if I didn't have an agent because we're still coming out of the aftershock of the strikes and there's not a ton of work out there right now. And my agent found something. So I'm grateful.
I've got one final question.
Go ahead.
Just wrap it up simply. I feel like if we oftentimes speak to a non-existent listener or, our imaginary listener of the kid who's interested in getting into post-production or is maybe as a post PA, somebody who hasn't already been all right, this is what I'm doing, right? Drunk the Kool-Aid kind of thing, but is maybe sitting on that precipice, they're PA or they're in film school or they're thinking about going to film school, something like that. If you're talking to that kid, right, what's your, in a nutshell, advice to that person?
Oh boy.
Whether or not this is the right business for them or what attributes they should have to do this kind of business or maybe, don't do it. What are what are you feeling?
Well, I definitely I don't want to be the don't do it guy, because I think it's all cutting movies is awesome. It's a very cool thing to get to do for a living, and it can be very rewarding. I think I would take a little bit of a sober approach though, and just be sure that this is a thing that's going to make you happy because you do have to dedicate a lot of time and bandwidth to it, and there's things in my life that for a lot of my friends who've taken more traditional career paths are a little easier and more straightforward, and I really have to kind of not exactly struggle but jump through hoops to make work, and you can make it all work, but it can be a massive commitment, and it can totally be worth it if you love it, but you just remain aware of what you're signing up for.
Of the trade-offs.
Yeah. I've been on movies where I worked 7 days a week for 6 weeks, and was getting out of the office at 1 a.m. and
Yeah.
I try not to do those movies anymore. But every once in a while, you have a week or two that's like that. It's going to happen.
I feel like I always give the same type of advice to people. I always say, like, make sure that you really love doing it, because you have to also take in, because I feel like that people kind of go into the business being like, I want to be a director, I want to be like a writer, an editor, and like it's gonna be great, and you have to be like,
People think being an editor is working a 9-to-5 job and they just get to cut movies all day.
yeah,
That's just not the
yeah,
case.
yeah. I think that people go into it thinking that without the thought, and this can be for any job. It doesn't have to be just for ours, but I think people go into it with that, like, that starry-eyed, like, Hollywood is so like cool, but they don't really take into consideration that that also means doing all of the quote unquote bad or tough stuff of,
Yeah, or I mean, it's even as simple as being like, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. This is the lifestyle you're signing
Yeah.
up for. You have to be okay with the good and the bad. It's not, you're not going to work in office 9 to 5, collect your 401k after 40 years and be done. Like, there's going to be a lot of highs, there's going to be a lot of lows. It's going to be really stressful. You're going to have lots of financial security and then a lot of financial insecurity, and you got to
Yeah.
figure out what you're doing.
Yeah, being aware of the freelance part of it, I think, is a big thing too.
Yeah.
Like,
and also, like, you can't just, I mean, you can, but it's not easy to just be a director or just be an editor. Like, you still have to go through
have to
the
fight for it.
steps. You have to
Yeah.
fight for it. You still have to, you might have to be a PA. Even when we were interviewing Eric the other week, he was like, I was a PA for like 10 years until he was able to do, like, he was driving and, in his words, schlepping all over town for
years.
for years until he could become like a post coordinator or post supervisor. So it's like, you have to be okay with doing that kind of stuff that's going to make you eventually, hopefully, be assistant editor, director, whatever it is. I think that's all that we've got for you. Do you have anything else, Michael?
No, I think this was great.
This was
Thank you for
great.
being our first editor.
Yeah,
Our
first editor.
First
You're
editor
the first
proper.
editor that we got here.
Cow.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sips and Clips. We'll catch you next time for episode 8.
Don't let us catch you sipping.
We'll still be clipping, though. All right, bye. Sips and Clips is a podcast produced by Lian McFalls and Michael Schusterman. Graphic by Max Schulman. Sound mixing by Cassidy Legan. Sound editing by Zach Griffin. Follow us on Instagram at Sips and Clips Pod. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.